总统，也是废除种族隔离制度的推手。1993年与曼德拉一块获得诺贝尔和平奖。
I'm just getting organized. Mr. Minister, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me and my wife to be back in the Republic of China, here in Taipei. I've been here quite often in the past, and I'm a great admirer of what your country has achieved. It is also a great honor to be able to address such a distinguished audience at such a special time in the history of your country. As you know, I'm an old friend. On each of my visits, I've been deeply impressed by your remarkable achievements in so many areas of activity, economically, technologically, and in terms of agriculture. Taiwan has become a model for economic and social development. It has also made enormous progress in bringing its people prosperity, freedom, and democracy. I've been asked to address you this afternoon on the subject World Peace, Past, Present, and Future. We all come from a past which was too often characterized by confrontation, by conflict, by war. Indeed, the 20th century was the most violent period in human history. It witnessed the First World War, the Japanese invasion of China, the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Cold War, with numerous surrogate conflicts in Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America. It also witnessed terrible civil wars and untold human suffering in Russia, in China, Cambodia, and in Rwanda and Burundi. However, after the collapse of international communism in 1989, a new situation began to unfold. We are now operating within an international framework of rapidly changing power relationships and new global development. These include a number of salient realities. The first is that we are living in one of the most peaceful eras in human history. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, there were no wars between countries in the 5 years preceding 2008. The second reality is that the conflict that does take place occurs within states, primarily between religious, ethnic, and cultural communities. In 2008, there were 15 such conflicts, including 3, those in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Somalia, which have become internationalized. Thirdly, we are witnessing major shifts in global economic power, with East and South Asia increasingly threatening the former dominance of Europe and the United States. These shifts in economic power will ultimately be reflected in shifts also in strategic and geopolitical power. Finally, all this will be taking place within the framework of growing demand for food and natural resources arising from unsustainable population growth. In a world that is increasingly resource and food hungry, more attention will inevitably be focused on my continent, where I come from, Africa. The main threat to peace during the 21st century will come from the inability of states to manage relationships between ethnic, cultural, and religious communities. The age of the single culture, the single language state is over. 2/3 of the world's 200 countries have minorities comprising more than 10% of their population. Cultural and ethnic minorities now comprise more than 900 million people throughout the world, 1 in 7 of the human population. Everywhere, populations are becoming more multicultural. And throughout the world, people are on the move, legally or illegally, across borders, across continents, and across oceans. There are now more than 12 million illegal immigrants in the United States. The 40 million Hispanic Americans are now the country's largest and fastest growing minority. By 2050, they will include more than 100 million people. 1 in 4 Americans will be of Spanish origin and will come from Spanish-speaking homes and communities. The accommodation of diverse immigrant groups has become, I believe, one of the most controversial issues in Europe. It has played a decisive role in recent elections in a number of European countries. In 2007, it led to some of the worst riots that France has experienced since the Second World War. And even in tolerant Britain, it is fueling a resurgence of far-right nationalist sentiment. Recently, the European Union's Justice Commissioner said that issues of immigration and migration should be at the top of the European Union's agenda. According to the Commissioner, the European Union needed to strike a balance between facilitating immigration of sorely needed skilled workers on the one hand and controlling illegal immigration and trafficking on the other hand. The present European workforce is expected to decline by 20 million people by 2050. And the only way of replacing most of them will be through integration. So you see, more and more, this issue of important minorities within formerly unilingual countries will grow. It's growing and growing. My own country, South Africa, is one of the most culturally and ethnically diverse societies in the world. Our future success will be determined by our ability to manage diversity and to promote multiculturalism. Our constitution in South Africa, which we negotiated in the first 5 years of the 1990s, provides space for all its communities to practice their cultures, to speak their own languages, and to be educated in the language of their choice. Unfortunately, the language and cultural provisions of the Constitution are increasingly neglected by government. Our rich heritage of indigenous languages, we have 11 official languages in terms of our Constitution. And our cultures will not survive if government does not take seriously its constitutional obligation to nurture and to develop each of these 11 languages. My language, Afrikaans, although still a vibrant written and spoken language, is under huge pressure at the university level, in business and in government. The Constitution also requires non-racialism and prohibits unfair discrimination of any kind. Despite this, there is an increasing tendency for white and black extremists to revert to the damaging racial rhetoric of the past. It is that 1/3 on each side which is causing this new racial shouting at each other. In 2009, we observed ugly outbreaks of xenophobia against immigrants from other countries, especially from Africa. This is not unique to South Africa, ladies and gentlemen. It is unfortunately part of a global problem. Too often, minority communities feel that they are not sufficiently accommodated, politically or culturally, in the processes by which they are governed. They feel that their governments are insensitive to their languages and their cultures, to their special needs, that they are subject to discrimination, to repression, and efforts to almost forcibly integrate them into the majority culture. And this sense of alienation, which important minorities in countries feel, then often breaks out in conflict, in rebellion, in violent protest marches, in demands for secession, and sometimes in acts of terrorism. Present or recent conflicts in the Ivory Coast, Darfur, Bosnia, Kosovo, Chechnya, Sri Lanka, the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and Turkey, and in many countries in Africa, provide examples of this phenomenon. Religious diversity also lies at the root of some of the ongoing conflicts in the world. Ongoing tensions in India have their roots in the unresolved conflict between Muslims and Hindus in Kashmir and elsewhere in the subcontinent. Differences between Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs in India, and Muslims and Christians in Nigeria and Sudan, all create volatile situations. Volatile situations that can explode into violence and terrorism at almost any time. So the peace and the good state of affairs which the Stockholm Institute writes about and reports on is a fragile peace. There are factors endangering that peace. And then, ladies and gentlemen, religious and cultural alienation are also some of the main underlying causes of international terrorism. Many terrorists are motivated by a deep sense of religious and cultural grievance. The rampant advance of globalized consumer culture, with its attendant political and social ethos, poses a fundamental threat to conservative societies, and particularly to fundamental Muslims. They fear it with every fiber of their being, precisely because their people